A man stands in a dark corner of a tavern, a brooding look on his face as he slowly pulls a hood over his head to hide from any onlookers. While there was cheering, shouting, and a general cheer, for this stranger, there was no joy in the air. Not after everything he'd been through. "Would you like another drink?" The peppy, dark-skinned barmaid asked as she moved over to his table, leaning over to pick up his empty mug. "Yeah, just make it stronger this time," the gruff stranger mumbled as he narrowed his eyes at a passing drunkard. "Ah, drinking to forget, I see," the woman asked in an understanding tone as she moved to pick up a nearby pitcher and began refilling the diminished beverage. "Bad night?" "Something like that. I got a lot I could forget. Too much." He picked up the newly refilled cup the moment it was full and took a long, loud swig before setting it back down. "Would you want to talk about it? I got good ears." The man looked over at the young woman and merely let out a deep sigh, pushing further back into the corner. "Move along, lass. There's too much going on in this world for you to be worried about. I couldn't forgive myself to trouble someone as innocent as you." The girl only gave a sweet, understanding smile as she leaned over him to refill his mug one last time. "I can see you'll need a little bit more with all those worries, stranger. I'll leave you to it. This one's on the house." The man nodded gruffly, and as he watched her begin to walk away, he internally mourned that such innocence could exist in such a dark, dark world. He had been that innocent once. Meanwhile, the maid moved out of sight to exit through the back door, a grin spreading across her lips as she tossed the apron she had stolen in a nearby alley and weighed a large coin purse in her hands. She began to whistle and walk down the alley. Amazing how little men pay attention when they brood and drink, always so convinced that they're the most experienced in the room, and the most burdened by life. Well, she was happy to help relieve just a little bit of those burdens, even if it was just the weight of a single coin purse. She was a philanthropist after all. She did what she could to relieve men of the things that burdened them. You know how people are always saying that humans are boring? That they're just the cookie-cutter, most boring race that anyone could ever choose, and if you do choose one, you're probably just playing a vanilla fighter, and that's that? I'm gonna start this entire video with one potentially very hot take. I think the rogue, alongside the fighter to a certain degree, is just the human of classes. Which may sound weird, right? But I promise, there's an entire point to what I'm saying here. Think about it. Why are humans just so basic? I mean, besides the fact that you are playing a fantasy game where you could be literally anything and you've chosen to play, well, what you already are. But here's the deal. To be honest, I've always found the fantasy of a human in D&D to be kind of fascinating and one I've always had a draw to. There's just something to me about the idea of being in a world where there are so many races with so many magical abilities, powers, etc. And yet as a human, the only thing special about you is your determination. Because, let's be super honest, in a world where every race has some sort of magical or abnormal ability and humans are just humans and yet they still seem to be an incredibly prevalent society, it means there's definitely something about them that stands out. And, to me at least, it's the humans' determination and drive to innovate, learn, and improve. They don't have any magical abilities, they just have an innate sense to want to know more about what they already do. And maybe that's just my own personal lore, who knows? But for me, that's why I find humans so fun. So what does all this have to do with the rogue, you might ask? Well, the rogue isn't special. It's not a druid who controls magic, it's not a barbarian with a rage so powerful it negates pain and damage, and it's not a paladin who can channel divine fury into their very strikes. In fact, they're not even a monk who has harnessed ki to propel their body beyond mortal limits. Really, if you're just looking at the base class, they're just normal. Incredibly skilled, powerfully talented, yeah, but normal. And that normalcy often is what I think makes this class just as enticing to me as playing a human. I want to talk about the strangely enticing fantasy of playing a class that is only as equipped as their wit and skill. I want to talk about why the rogue is a perfect example of the willpower to be better. So let's talk about that. Like I said at the beginning, I think Rogue and Fighter are incredibly similar classes, and here's why. Both of the classes don't really have any special abilities, at least in a magical sense, baked into their core class. They don't have spellcasting, they don't have ki, they don't have rage that causes them to be incredibly brutal and terrifying. And for those of you who want to argue that rage really isn't a magical effect, it literally halves damage. It doesn't really matter how angry you are, a sword is a sword. There is something going on with that. But regardless of my hot takes on barbarians, Rogue and Fighter do not have anything special. They have a lot of mechanics that make them super powerful, but none of them are supernatural or incredible or anything that a normal human could not do. And even for the subclasses that give them magical powers, see Arcane Trickster, Soul Knife, or Echo Fighter, only add on to what their base class could already do. They don't exactly make it so that they could do anything super special or out of the ordinary, it just adds on to the amazing things that they could already do as a base class. There is no magic there, just skill, power, determination, and the ability to push forward. And I find that really fun to play at the table, and especially fun to DM for, because it's just so interesting to find somebody who is crazy enough to stand up and do all this stuff alongside all this magic and supernatural ability. See, Rogue is a great example of pushing one's skill to their limits, and I think that's what the class is kind of all about, alongside the fighter, like I was saying, which I will be getting to eventually. That'll just be its own episode. You know, why you should play fighter. But this is about the rogue, and the reason that it's such a great example of pushing your skills to the limits is the mechanics that they get. Point in case, expertise. Expertise allows you to double your proficiency in something. And what is proficiency? Proficiency is how the game shows that you are practiced and trained and talented at something. So expertise lets you be doubly more so. And yeah, other classes do get expertise, mainly Bard, and there are some feats now that allow you to get it, but just getting it baked into your class more so than anybody else, as rogues do get more proficiencies and expertise than any other class, shows that your character, while they may not be supernaturally talented, have trained and focused themselves and honed to be able to be this talented. And you know how there's that whole sort of stereotype of the dark, edgy rogue who was just left on the streets? This is kind of why. It's not because there's just this innate need to be able to be edgy, though yes, some people do have that. But when you look at the rogue and you see all these abilities they have, you start to think, why would somebody push themselves that far? And it leads you to assuming that they had to be put into a situation where they had no other choice but to learn these skills, to survive. Oftentimes, people do not grow, they do not intensely train into these things unless they have no other choice. And that's why that backstory, to me at least, is so common. So yeah, expertise is a great example of how rogues push themselves to their limits when they don't have any other abilities. They have to figure out how to be able to level the playing field, and they do so with their own wit, intelligence, and drive to just be better at those things. And if you look at all the subclasses, a ton of them really just grant extra intellect abilities on top of their dexterous advantages. Mastermind gives you the ability to be able to strategize and help other people with the help action at a distance. Scout gives you extra proficiencies in order to be able to track things. Inquisitor gives you extra ability to be able to use insight checks and learn more about people. All of these things just give you the ability to be able to use your mind to get an advantage where magic ordinarily would be able to. To top it all off, eventually rogues get reliable talent, one of the single strongest features in the entire game, as it just straight up allows you to not be able to roll bad on the skills that you're good at. That's amazing and a perfect example, because what it does is it shows that your character is so well honed, so well trained, that they are just going to naturally be able to do things because they have been so practiced at it, while others have relied on other abilities that they have. And that leads into one of my favorite features of the rogue, and I know it's a staple ability that everybody knows, but I think it's my favorite for a different reason than most, and that's sneak attack. See, the thing for sneak attack for me is it emphasizes the fantasy of the rogue in a really fun way. It shows that they are not powerful, but they are skilled enough to get that one good hit in to be able to be useful enough for the party to supplement anything else they may be missing. Not only that, a lot of times sneak attack relies on the enemy being engaged with one of your teammates, forcing you to have to rely on them. You know that your teammates are super powerful, and you can help with that, but you have to work in tandem with them. And when you do get that hit in, you are showing your skill and proficiency. Yes, I can't cast spells. No, I don't have a supernatural rage. No, I don't have the ability to harness ki, but you know what I can do? I can pinpoint that exact spot of where to hit with my extreme skill and be able to do so as long as you distract the monster for just half a second. In my mind, that's cinematic, that's awesome, it's great for a story, and it really emphasizes the amazing power the rogue can have. I can do amazing things as long as you give me the ability to lean into what I'm good at, and what I'm good at is being skilled. And you know, when I say all these things and I talk about the rogue and how amazing their abilities are, I find myself sort of leaning into a very particular character. And I know this isn't a hot take or anything, I think Batman is a great example of the fantasy of a rogue. I mean, seriously, when you look at it, out of all of the DC characters, Batman is one of the single most popular, and he has no special abilities. Nothing but the determination to be able to gain better skills. And a boatload of money, but let's be honest, that money is not actually what makes Batman so amazing. It is his skills. The money is just kind of a cherry on the top, and for me, it's the same for rogues. Rogues do not need magic items. They can use them and they could just be the cherry on the top, but their base skills is really all they need. There are plenty of stories where Batman gets stripped of everything except for his own wit. And his own wit is always all he needs to be able to do what he needs to accomplish. Ultimately, I think the reason that Batman is a popular hero is exactly why you should play a rogue. It is fun to know that you have done nothing more than just taken what you have, your own mind, your own body, and decided that that's enough. You're enough. And at the end of the day, I think that's what a rogue is. It's looking at all these amazing things, all the talents and powers that everybody else has, And knowing that, you know what? You can play ball too, because you're enough. You've got a mind, you've got the skills, you have the ability to teach and learn and better yourself to be able to play ball with everybody else. Sure, maybe they have extra talent, but sometimes talent can only get you so far. The ability to adapt, overcome, and learn is what makes some people so impressive. It's fun to root for an underdog, and it's especially great to be able to see that underdog surpass everybody else because they knew that they could. I think playing a rogue is a wonderful way of being able to experience the feeling of just knowing that you're good enough, that you're enough, that you can do what you want to do with what you have. And that's truly inspiring and uplifting. So go out and play a rogue, you beautiful bastards. Don't forget to go out into the world and make it your own. Don't forget to have a great day, and never forget to play a role. Thank you. Come again.